All right, I'm going to show you the one tool that has helped multiple of our clients go from 200K to 500K, 500K to a million, even, lower than that. It really just depends. But at the end of the day, your entire business is built on numbers. And a lot of times, as we scale, we like to get away from these numbers. Maybe we found something that worked, we started doing more of it, and now we forgot what our model is actually based on. So this is a tool that is going to be able to take us back no matter what level of scale we are at or what level of scale we are trying to achieve, and take us back to the basics. How many calls are we booking per day, per week, per month? How many reps do we need? What is our calendar capacity? How many actual schedule calls does that mean? And we're projecting this out. And this is by far the most important part. One, because it's going to create excitement in your organization. You're going to see the numbers and go, oh my gosh, is that really possible? And then two, we're going to have complete clarity on what sales and marketing needs to do together to be able to accomplish the outcome that we actually want to. So let's pop over to my screen real quick. So you can see this chart, and I'll share this document in the comments if you guys are interested, but you can basically create one yourself as well. So up here in the top left, I'm just going to give you an overview of it, and we're going to go line by line on how this actually works when we consult with clients. So we have in the top left, we have our goal, and then we have our products. So we have, and you just name these whatever you want, right? So if I just do test, that's going to update the product down here, okay? So we have our products. I'm going to switch this back to product one. And then we have our breakdown of the product prices. So we have product one, product two, upsell one, upsell two, downsell one, downsell two. You can have whatever you want there, okay? You might sell 7 different products. Now, basically, that is going to come down here. And where the gold is here is we can look at on this left-hand side, what is the percentage of each of those that we expect to sell? So we can actually start to break up how many product sales are going to be broken up off of the total amount of calls, okay? So we have 40%, 20%, 15, 15, 10. We don't expect to sell any upsells twos, okay? Now, in this section up here, we have month over month, what we want. And the green is where we can actually go in and edit what we want to input as a potential outcome, right? As a projection. And then everything else will update. So we can start updating this. Now, the cool part is if you're doing this in June, you already have some months of data. And what I recommend is to plug in these numbers based on the data that you have, and you'll magically see that these numbers down here, your total and expected cash, will almost match identically the projection. So, and this is pretty cool because I just saw a video from Alex Hormozi, and he was talking about back of napkin math. A lot of times is more accurate than doing the actual math itself, because it over time, it all evens out, right? As long as your projection is good enough, as long as the metrics that you're actually looking at make sense. So next up, we have total calls per day. Now you can see that's not in green. So there's no formula, there is a formula, so we're not going to touch that. But we have total calls per week. And then we have, a different type of, we basically have 2 types of calls per week right here. Okay. So this is marketing, and this is from setters. Now the brand I was doing this with has a setter heavy, motion. So they're actually booking 108 out of 128 calls, they're booking, 108 of them themselves. So basically, if we have 108 calls created by the setter per week, and we have 20 per week from marketing, that's going to equal a total of 540 calls per month. Okay. Now, based on that, how many calls do we want closers taking per day? And in this situation, we had 5. That's a pretty average number. If you go up above 6, usually too many. Below 4, probably not doing too much. So 5 is a pretty good sweet spot. Then we have the number of reps, and this is another formula. So it's basically telling us, based on this number of calls and based on the number of the number of calls that the reps are taking, what is the number of reps that we actually need at any given time? And you can see it goes up and down based on these other numbers. All right. Now, calendar capacity is a metric that I created when working with Mastermind.com and Dean Graziosi, because we had this thing where it was kind of this missing metric that no one could find. And the reason it existed was that we were saying, oh, we'll book you 100 calls per week from marketing. The problem was closers did not have their calendars open for 100 calls. So even though they may have been able to provide 100, there was not 100 slots open on the calendar. So we had to make sure that the actual capacity of the sales reps was at 100%. So I actually recommend moving this down to 80% until you can confirm that. So calendar capacity is 80%, which means that you'll actually have 440 calls booked. Okay. Now you can put this at 100 for now. So scheduled calls, we have 550 scheduled calls. We have an expected show up rate of 80%, or an average, let's say. Total calls, 440. Our close rate, 18.5%. And then it's going to break down, based on these percentages over here, how many of each product is going to be sold. Okay. So down here, that means then this amount of money is going to be collected in revenue, not cash collected, based on these products being sold. And then down here, we have expected cash. And this is basically the revenue times our average cash collection. Now, again, yes, you might have some products that do way better on cash than other products, but this is an average. So 70% of the time, we collect all the cash, okay? So we can see that for $487,000 would be collected off of these 440 calls. So what this allows us to do is now we have a baseline. And let's say next month we want to hit $1 million in cash collected. Well, it makes it very easy for us to go in here and manipulate these metrics and figure out what we need to do to actually hit this number. And this is where a lot of sales organizations go wrong. They try to do this math in their head, or they don't have this modeled out, and they can't figure out which levers to actually pull, because we might find out, hey, increasing the close rate from 18% to 35% is an easier needle mover than booking an extra 300 calls. Now, I would argue that to not be true, but that's neither here nor there, okay? So if we want to achieve $1 million in cash, what do we need to do? Well, we have a few things. So maybe we book 200 calls here and 60 calls here, okay? And that gets us to 989, okay? So can setters set 200 calls a week? And can marketing set 60? Probably not, right? It really depends. So let's say we're going to aim for 108. That's like setters are maxed out already. And we're going to go now 150 book calls, okay? So we're at 981. Now we need to move something else. So, hey, increase the show percent by 5%. That seems relatively easy. And there is our million, okay? Now, you can start doing this all the way across the board and say, hey, here's where we want to be next quarter. Here's where we want to be, last quarter of the year. And some of these metrics, you're going to be able to increase. If your show rate's at 30%, increasing that to 60% will be a huge needle mover, and will probably be a lot easier than impacting some of these other metrics. Okay, so we get a look at, hey, what is the actual biggest needle mover here? Now, increasing close rate from 18 to 25% usually isn't that big of a difference compared to something like show rate or these other things. Okay, but this allows us to start taking a look at this. Now, let's say we are able to bump up our cash collected, and we're able to do 75% instead of 70, right? Well, that's an extra $100,000 right there. So pretty cool. But we start to see how easy this could actually be. And then on the far right-hand side, we have a tally of our total cash and our total, revenue right here. So we can map this out and go, oh, wow. If we want to hit, and you can reverse engineer it too. So if we want to hit 20 million, what do we have to do this year to hit that? And the goal is not to have it jump from 550 scheduled calls to 1,109. That's going to be very difficult to do unless you're highly skilled at scaling, paid marketing. So more than likely, what is going to have to happen is this is going to go from 20 to 40, and this is going to go to 128, okay? And then next month, this is going to go to 150, and this is going to go to 70, and then this is going to stay at 150, right? Like maybe this gets maxed out, okay? So what does that mean? Well, now marketing needs to provide more calls. And what do we think they can do? Can they do week over week? Can they increase by 20, what would that be? 20 times 4, 40 calls, right? So, if we increase this by, 120, 140, 160. So month over month, we're increasing by 40 calls, right? Booked calls, qualified. 180, 200. Whoops. 200, 220, 240, and 260. Okay. So if we were to do that, and this is 150, okay, now we're getting closer to that 20 million mark. So now what if we bump up 85, and then let's say we just stick with an 85% close rate across the board. That's the goal for the year, right? We scale that up, okay? Now, taking it from 80 to 85 isn't too bad. But maybe this is a 60 and we want to go from 60 to 65, 65 to 70, 75, and so on and so forth. Now, expecting to jump from 60 to 80 overnight and then keep it that way for the rest of the year is wishful thinking a lot of times. So now let's go ahead and say we take this to 20% here, and then we get to 23%, and then we get to 25%. So it's going to take a couple months to get to 25%, but we're confident we can get there, and that's going to remain there. Well, now we're all the way up at $26 million, right? And it starts to feel a lot more human. It starts to feel a lot more real because these numbers are not scaling at some crazy rate. They're scaling over a few months, a little bit at a time, right? You can add 5%, 5%, 5% in a couple different buckets over the course of the year. And now you are doing $2.4 million a month in cash versus your $487,000 in 12 months, okay? So I hope this video is helpful. You can design this however you want, but I highly recommend you creating a way to create the actual model and then be able to go in there and play around with it, right? You can sit down with your marketing team. Say, hey, if you were to move these numbers around, what would you do? Sit down with your sales team. If you were to move these numbers around, what would you do? And then take it back to leadership and say, hey, this is our game plan. This is how we're going to hit X number that we said. Do we have permission to do A, B, and C to be able to achieve those results, right? So I hope this video is helpful. If you guys like this, go ahead and comment below. If you want more videos around the strategy of the scaling sales teams and sales organizations, let me know. A lot of our other videos are on technology, but this is a primary part of what we do because we don't know what kind of technology to implement until we understand this part. So I hope this video is helpful. We'll see you on the other side.